What's up, guys? We got another game with the black pieces in a speed run. We are rated 750. We now have someone who's almost 900, 894, the highest. They open with e3. We just develop a piece. They now develop their king's knight. What do? We throw a pawn in the center and open up the diagonal for our bishop. Already, even though he's basically 900, he's moving the same piece twice already in the third move. So we know this isn't good. We see it all the time. What is it? Threaten nothing. Drawback, big waste of time. Encourages us to play moves we want to play with tempo. You can go c5 or e5 here. I'm just going to go with e5. Grab the actual center as opposed to the pseudo center. And now it comes with tempo and it opens up my bishop. So now he has to move the same piece again. So this is super bad. Now you could try to do some computer type stuff and go h5, h4 because of the knight's positioning, but I'm going to stick to basic stuff and develop the pieces. So knights or bishops, right? Get them out, pick one. I'm going to develop my knight, bring it towards the center. And there's nothing crazy, right? Both knights out, both pawns out. Simple stuff. c4. What does this move threaten? Threatens a trade in the center. The downside is he's not developing his pieces. Okay. I'm going to ignore it and I'm going to continue developing. So I'm going to bring my light square bishop out and control this pretty open diagonal since there's no pawns obstructing it. He brings out his other knight. What does this threaten? Well, it applies extra pressure towards this pawn, although it's still adequately defended by me. What is the downside? The downside is he's walking on into the center and I can push if I want. And he doesn't have the square adequately defended, which means he's going to have to move his knight. He can't move it towards the center, which means he's going to have to move it to an awkward square. Therefore, I'm going to push and displace his good knight, his well-placed knight, and I'm going to leave his poorly placed knight there. So he doesn't take, he moves his knight forward into my camp. But we've also seen in the speed run that whenever they do this, they don't seem to take into account if they have retreat squares, escape squares. So if I automatically go a6, the first question White should be asking themselves before they make this move is it trapped? And he can go back to a3, so it's not trapped, but a3 is a garbage square. So I'm just going to send it back there. And now his knights are terrible. And I can at that point go d3, which means his bishop can't get out, his queen can't get out, and his knight can't reroute. And all that rhymes. And I'm just going to do it. It's defended. It stifles his position. He can't move the d pawn. He can't, it's positionally binding him. He can't develop the bishop, the knights. He can't castle. The queen can't come. I mean, this is devastating. This move, d3, just shuts the door, locks the key, and says you're never getting out. And it's scary. Very scary. Because how do you make a move here as white? Well, that's not it. It goes f3. Maybe you should have just moved a pawn and tried to get your bishop out. But he goes f3, taking control of these squares, maybe trying to prepare e4, like e4 here, which would be nice if it was his turn, but it's not his turn. The drawback is it opens up this diagonal, the dark square diagonal towards this king, but mostly it's just a giant waste of time in a position where I'm going to just solidify this crazy wedge pawn. He goes c5, which opens up this square for this knight, so it's a little bit clever. I'm a fan. I could counter that if I want, just to destroy his hopes completely. Now you could just do something regular like develop. You could probably even take the pawn, but I don't see why you would do that. There is this option of knight b4, and what that does is that eyes this square. That square is defended by this knight, but he's trying to move this knight. So by going knight b4, I'm kind of saying you can't move the knight. Sorry, guy. You also can't kick me with a3 because your knight's in the way. He doesn't care. He moves the knight, but that undefends the c2 square. So now I can jump in with check, and his king has to go here, and that is ugly. So we're going to throw this check in and get him to vamos, get out of here. Or give us your queen. Okay, so he moves the king. And, okay, his rook is hanging. For simplicity's sake, I'm just going to take the rook. He takes it back. Now his knight's in the corner. Terrible, terrible, terrible. Now I can develop while taking pieces and aiming at the king. What else can I ask for? White, instead of developing anything on the back rank, moves his knight again to threaten absolutely nothing. Another terrible move. And we can do anything we want, but we should continue developing because we still haven't finished. We're just going to castle. Now he brings his knight back in from the corner. This threatens our bishop. Fine. What do? We're going to centralize our queen, defend our bishop, and attack his knight. This isn't a thing because it's defended 10 times. He defends his knight and shuts down the position so we can't open it. I like that by him. Not bad. There's just one problem, and that's we have full control of these light squares. So after a move like this, he's lucky he even has a square to go to because we'd win a piece immediately. There's checks like this, but then he'll take and win a piece. So we're going to just apply second pressure and say, you know what, we'll take it on the next turn. No big deal. We always have these ideas in the future. This knight is horribly misplaced. We could even attack it if we wanted, but I don't want to waste time doing that. I'd rather try to just open this position up and get to the king. He's completely stuck and paralyzed, as you can see. It's just an example of positional domination. You know, this is one of those positions. I mean, I'm up a rook here, but let's say his rook was still here on a1 and I was only up a pawn. Or not even up a pawn. I don't know. Let's say he had a pawn somewhere. So I'm not up any material, and yet the engine will still say like that I'm -4. You know, I'm completely winning just because of the positional nature. So he goes knight to d4, improving the knight, threatening the bishop. Fine. But you know what? I don't really care. I just want to take another piece because I'm up a piece. And if he takes back, I get to do in a pawn and protect my bishop. All is well. And this knight isn't stable because it's not an outpost. I have a c-pawn. But now that the knight is gone from e5, I can play bishop g4 and not worry about a trade. That means I get to keep the bishop and misplace his knight. So this is a really bad move because it asks for this and this with tempo. So I'm going to expand on the queen side just because it's a free move, so it's not a waste of time. It's free. And he literally walks into this, which I was going to play anyway to displace this knight. But now when I do it, it comes with this attack, double attack. And so it's even stronger. And you could see just the complete harmony in my position. And so he moves his queen. There's not much to say about this. That's why I'm going fast. Like, obviously you take the piece. If he takes back, you're going to take back with check. He has no counterplay. His bishops, I mean, it's move 21. And look at his bishops. Of course he's not going to win, right? You can't play chess like that. Okay, he just moves the king. He senses he's in some danger. It's a little too late for that. Um, but okay. We're up 7 points of material. We can trade everything. Uh, let's just start trading stuff. Get a little closer to the king. We could also get our rooks into the game. That's definitely even a stronger move. So we could do that. Yeah, we're just going to get our rook in the game and threaten checkmate in one because these pawns block it. And he can't move his bishop, right? So if he wants to protect it, he's got to sack a queen or move the king. If he moves the king, he's walking into 1,000 things. So I expect a resignation in short order. In short order, sir. Come on, Visa. You got this. It's the flag icon. And this is just typical no development. But, of course, they move their queen out 1,000 times. And if you're going to move your queen out, at least have it like black's, centralized in an somewhat closer to an endgame. So he moves his king over to defend the bishop, but clearly this doesn't work. I'm going to give this check. His king has nowhere to go. Right? So if he blocks with the bishop, it's going to be checkmate either way. And now Visa's realizing this. And in 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Well, we got the checkmate. Didn't happen on the 3-2-1, but we got another game. We're 775, but our opponent's 930. This is the highest one we've had. And now we're gonna go d6 against e4. Right? He develops his knight, protecting his pawn. We develop our knight, attacking his pawn. He opens up. He throws his second pawn in the center, opening up the position, developing his diagonals for his bishops and stuff. And now we're gonna go g6 and play the Pirts. He brings his bishop out. Now developing is good, and it is always the answer, but you have to develop to the right square. This is clearly bad because it encourages me to play pawn to c6, which defends the center with tempo. And then after he moves his bishop, I get another free move. Now you could block with a piece and it's playable, but I think this makes more sense because you get a free turn, and I like free turns. He moves his bishop back, but it's still staring here, right? Less than ideal. However, there is a kind of a pin here, so maybe things like this and you can't take, right? So we're going to keep that in mind, and with that in mind, I'm going to go knight here and unpin. That way I have access. You see, I have access if I want to use this pawn and take. I am going to take the pawn and break down white's center with my side pawn. White takes back with his pawn. I'm trying to create some type of clamp on my position, but now there's never a threat of e5, so this knight's always stable. I also have good squares for my knights. So now, and also this diagonal's open, so I'm happy because I know I'll have a good square for all of my minor pieces. Okay, my turn. Bishop g7, natural developing move on this awesome diagonal, preparing castling. He develops his knight, just developing and getting ready to castle. I castle. And now I'm ready to improve my minor pieces and then my major pieces. I'm expecting white to castle. What did he just do? Okay, so white takes my knight with their bishop, giving up the bishop pair voluntarily for no reason. I don't like that decision. I'm going to take back, develop my last minor piece, right, which now eyes both sides of the board very nicely, and it vacates the c8 square for a rook. White develops his last minor piece. Fine, that's what you're supposed to do. It's threatening a piece trade, but it's not something to worry about. I welcome that trade. The drawback is it undefends, as we've seen in many of our videos, this pawn. And oftentimes we attack it with queen b6. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. What else? Well, we can continue developing, let's say, a rook c8, queen b6, queen a5 is interesting. There are options. I'm going to go with the immediate queen b6 to see how white reacts to me attacking this pawn. You could push it, but that weakens this diagonal. It's a terrible move. You can bring your queen to the center and offer a queen trade, but that doesn't actually protect the pawn, and it walks into this discovery. So I really don't like this move. Trading is like an even playable move, but taking looks kind of devastating because of these ideas. Also, the rook is hit with tempo, so he might just castle. No, he moves the rook, which actually makes perfect sense, I guess. Not really. I don't know. It gets it out of the way of this diagonal, but at the same time, you're still not castled. And I can take here, unless I'm running into something. Maybe not. I'm just going to take here. He can take here if he wants, but that vacates the back row, and he's not castled. Okay, so he's chasing my queen further because it's defended this way. Interesting. My queen has this evacuation square and this evacuation square. If I go here, he'll probably go back, and then I'll have to go here. Otherwise, if I go this way, I guess I should go to f5 just so he doesn't infiltrate with tempo. Yeah, that way his rook is here and not threatening to come into my position just yet. And now I also have these ideas. So he castles, but now I can move my knight with a discovery on the queen. So where's the best place to move our knight? I feel like you don't get much, unfortunately. Like, even if you go here, the queen moves somewhere. What are you really doing? I guess that's a good reroute for this square, though. Although this square is hanging. Here, queen somewhere. I mean, that's kind of trying to get fancy, so let's not be fancy. Let's start with, okay, you could bring a rook over, right? You could also start with this. So I'm going to kick the bishop. Since we're up 2 pawns, we welcome these trades and see where he wants to put the bishop. Because maybe where he puts the bishop gives us a different opportunity, a different knight jump that works. So this can't hurt. Controlling the g5 square. But I literally just thought that he trapped my queen. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. This guy just did that. He goes g4. What looks like traps my queen, but the pawn is hanging. Thank God. I'm just going to take that with check because that's a queen trade guaranteed with a free pawn with pressure on 2 pieces. And so I'm already up 3 pawns. There are no queens. He took a piece, I take a piece, and I'm threatening more trades. And once the queens are off and you're ahead, you always feel so much better because you know there's no counterplay. So he moves his knight. You could easily develop, you can easily trade, but just for fun, I want to kick this knight because I see it has nowhere to go, so it has to go to g2. But this square is covered by a pawn. But I guess I would be encouraging it to go to e3, and you don't want to do that. Fine, I won't do that. Alternatively, the knight is hanging. How many of you saw the knight was hanging? How many of you listened to what I said, watched me tell the story of pushing this pawn, and didn't even realize in your head that this was hanging? You see, that's why I shouldn't believe things people say. Hopefully you noticed the knight was hanging, and you take it. He attacks my bishop. We're just going to move the bishop to safety. You could have also moved it with tempo, but I'll just leave it on a defended square that's actually an outpost because there's no pawns that can kick it. And so this never needs to move for the rest of the game. Once this goes here, it never needs to move for the rest of the game. You just put both your rooks here and here and you win. Ta-da! He develops his knight. Doesn't matter. You just put any rook to the c file. He can take this pawn here on a7 after the trades. No one cares. Okay, so he just blocks by putting his knight in. You can take this. I'm gonna take it probably, and then he'll take it, and then you can put the other rook. But then he starts eating all your pawns. I mean, it's not the end of the world, but it is slightly unnecessary. So what do we want to do? We could just go here and bring this back and kick it out. Let's just stick with that. That way he doesn't eat all of our pawns for no reason. And there's no good way to really... My rook was hanging. Wow. Totally oblivious. Did not even see that. That's the problem with making YouTube videos. All I do is talk, and I don't think, you see? But it's okay. Luckily, we're still up. 4 points of material. 4 points of material. So that'll be plenty. He's going to move maybe his rook in, but I don't think that's going to save him. Instead, he goes and attacks my pawn. I don't want him to win any pawns, so I'm just going to defend it. And this structure so far defends itself. I need to improve my dark square bishop, which he encourages me to do with tempo. Nice little cubby hole, right? Get my king, like, I don't know, somewhere in the center. He goes and threatens a pawn, but I mean, it doesn't really matter. I'm just gonna push it because I want to set up a trap. Like if I go a5 and he takes this pawn, I have this fork. It also defends the pawn, so it's not like a random move. And now I kick the rook and set up the trap. He doesn't have to take, but I knew they can't resist. 900s, come on. And yes, I blundered my rook before, but you see, it's all with the knowledge that they're going to blunder it back. So a little bit of give, a little bit of take. And now the game's over. Sev should just resign. That would be ideal. But instead, Sev is attacking my bishop. I'm just going to get it close to the king and then solidify it with a pawn. And maybe we can get some checkmates in here. Let's solidify the thing that's being attacked, and let's get our rook into the game. And that will be GG. He might sack, but that doesn't do anything. Otherwise, all this does is stop the advance. But you got bigger problems than that. So here, he has to go to the back rank, and then you could throw this bishop in. So we're going to give this check. He has to go backwards because this is covered. And it's not looking good. And now this is just checkmate. Rook blocks, rook takes. The reason you needed this was to cover this square, so there's no escape. Alternatively, you could have probably just done that with the pawn. He gives me some random checks. We'll just move out of the way. Hide here. King on f6 is safe. Safe from checks. And now this is unstoppable mate. I suppose he can go here right now and hang the rook, and then I don't have that mate, but I should have other stuff. So yeah, this is game over. Alright, hopefully you guys can see the pattern of how I play and how I think. Developing, until I notice something is really wrong. My opponent, they're wasting time, or they do something crazy, and then I just punish them. And then I'll break principles. But okay, so we get 17 points. That's it. We climb a little bit, and we keep going with the speed run. Hopefully this helps. Feel free to submit your own videos for game analysis. Goodbye.